The hallways of the Galactic Academy of Sciences shimmered with the soft blue light that was comfortable for most of the Class 2 and 3 species that attended. The building itself was a marvel of engineering, floating in the gentle atmosphere of Nexus Station, built specifically to host students from across the galaxy in peaceful study. Today was special. For the first time in the Academy's 300-year history, a student from Earth, classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, would be joining them. Noah Campbell stepped through the doorway of Lecture Hall 7B, immediately aware of the 30 pairs of alien eyes focused on him. At 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and suntanned skin, he looked massive compared to most of the other students. He smiled politely and took a seat at the only desk built to human proportions. "Welcome, welcome," chirped Professor Zixal, his 8 spindly limbs gesturing in the universal sign of academic greeting. The professor's compound eyes reflected the light as he addressed the class. "As you can see, we are honored to have our first human student joining us this semester." A ripple of nervous movement passed through the room. A crystalline Valorian student nearest Noah shifted her desk back slightly, the sound of crystal scraping against the floor making Noah wince. "Humans come from what we classify as a Class 12 death world," continued Professor Zixal. "Earth features extreme temperature variations, high gravity, toxic flora, dangerous fauna, and unpredictable weather patterns. Despite this, or perhaps because of it, humans have not only survived, but thrived." Noah tried to look friendly, but his smile only revealed his teeth, causing several gaseous Meraxian students to pulse anxiously in their containment fields. "Mr. Campbell will be joining our xenobiology course as part of the new diversity initiative. I expect you all to make him welcome." The professor's mandibles clicked together in what Noah recognized as a sign of authority. A small, blue-skinned student with webbed hands raised a fin-like appendage. "Professor, is it safe to have a Deathworlder in class? I've heard they can snap bones with their bare hands." Noah sighed quietly. This wasn't the first time he'd heard such concerns. "That's a fair question, Mocha," Professor Zixal replied. "Mr. Campbell has undergone the standard safety protocols and has signed all the necessary non-aggression agreements. Humans may be physically strong, but they are also highly intelligent and social creatures." "Thank you, Professor," Noah said, keeping his voice soft. "I promise I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm just excited to learn about other species, same as all of you." The amphibious student named Mocha seemed to relax slightly, her gill slits pulsing more slowly. Professor Zixal clicked his mandibles together again. "Now, let's continue with our semester overview. We will meet 3 times per week for lectures, followed by practical study periods in the biodome, and of course there will be the standard recess period each day." At the mention of recess, Noah perked up noticeably. After sitting still for so long in the lower gravity, he was looking forward to some physical activity. "What's wrong with the human?" whispered a Triloxy student to their neighbor. "It seems excited about recess. Is that a threat display?" Professor Zixal overheard. "Different species use recess periods differently. For some, it's meditation time. For others, scholarly discussion. For Mr. Campbell's species, it may be, well, we shall see." When class ended, the students filed out slowly, many keeping a careful distance from Noah. He didn't mind. It was expected. As he gathered his digital textbooks, Professor Zixal approached him. "Mr. Campbell, I'm curious to see how you'll use the recess periods. The biodome has been slightly modified to accommodate human needs." Noah smiled. "Nothing special needed, Professor. Just some open space to move around in. Maybe some trees or rocks if you have them." "Trees? Rocks?" The professor's antennae twitched with curiosity. "The biodome has all standard terrain features, but what would you need those for?" "Just for fun," Noah replied with a shrug, not realizing how his answer would confuse the professor even more. "It's been weeks since I had a good climb or run. Looking forward to recess tomorrow." As Noah left the classroom, Professor Zixal made a note in his personal database. "Human student shows unusual enthusiasm for recess period. Possible research opportunity. Monitor closely." The next day would reveal just how differently humans defined recess from the rest of the galactic community. The Academy's biodome stretched across 5 acres of the space station's central hub. It contained a small forest, rolling hills that could almost be called mountains, a clear blue lake, and open grasslands. The artificial sun shone brightly overhead, creating the perfect weather conditions that most species found pleasant. Noah stepped into the biodome and took a deep breath. After weeks in recycled station air, the fresh oxygen felt amazing in his lungs. Around him, his alien classmates spread out for their recess activities. The Valorians found flat surfaces to sit on, their crystalline bodies glittering as they entered meditation states. The gas-based Meraxians floated to the tops of trees, bobbing gently in the light breeze. The amphibious Trilixi gathered near the lake, dipping their webbed appendages in the water while discussing theoretical physics. Fascinating how each species uses this time differently, said Professor Zixal, who had appeared beside Noah. What will you do with your recess period, Mr. Campbell? Noah grinned. I need to change first, if that's okay. He pulled a small bag from his backpack and headed to a privacy screen near the entrance. When he emerged, several alien students gasped. Noah was now wearing shorts and a light t-shirt that revealed his muscular arms and legs. He began stretching, touching his toes and rotating his shoulders. Is the human preparing for combat? Whispered Clavex, a younger Valorian whose crystal structure pulsed with anxiety. I don't believe so, answered Professor Zixal, though his antennae twitched uncertainly. Humans have different physiology requirements. Their muscles need regular movement to maintain functionality. The entire class watched as Noah finished stretching. Then, to everyone's surprise, he started running along the perimeter of the forest. Not a casual walk like the faculty sometimes enjoyed, but a steady ground-eating pace that seemed to serve no scholarly purpose whatsoever. Should we stop him? Asked Mocha, the blue-skinned Trilixi student. He's moving very fast. Maybe he's trying to escape? Professor Zixal's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. I don't think so. Let's observe. This might be natural human behavior during unstructured time. Noah completed a full circuit of the forest edge, then veered toward the hills. He increased his pace, running up the steepest section, rather than taking the gentle path most bipedal species preferred. By the time he reached the top, a thin layer of moisture covered his skin. The human is leaking, gasped a first-year student. Should we call medical? That's normal, explained the professor. It's called sweat. It's how humans regulate their body temperature. From the hilltop, Noah surveyed the biodome with evident pleasure. He spotted a fallen tree at the bottom of the hill and headed toward it at a controlled run downhill. When he reached it, he began doing what looked like push-ups against the log, lifting his body weight repeatedly. By now, most of the class had abandoned their own recess activities to watch the human. Some recorded his movements on their data tablets. Professor Zixal was taking extensive notes. Is this what humans consider relaxation? Asked Clavex, still nervous but now also curious. Perhaps this is some form of ritual, suggested another student. Or maybe a mating display. Noah, unaware of his audience, moved to a sturdy tree with low branches. He jumped up, grabbed a branch, and began pulling his entire body weight up and down repeatedly. Look at the strain on its muscle fibers, whispered a medical student. It's deliberately causing micro-damage to its tissues. After completing 20 pull-ups, Noah dropped down, breathing heavily but smiling. He noticed the crowd of aliens staring at him and waved. Sorry, am I disturbing anyone? He asked. I can move farther away if the noise is bothering your studies. Professor Zixal stepped forward. Not at all, Mr. Campbell. We're simply observing. Is this typical human recess behavior? Noah shrugged. Just a basic workout. I usually do. More, but I don't want to push too hard on my first day. He looked around the biodome with appreciation. This place is great, though. Are there any rules against climbing those bigger trees? Or swimming in the lake? The professor's compound eyes seemed to widen. You wish to climb to dangerous heights and immerse yourself in water? During recess? Yeah, if that's okay, Noah replied. Just to stay in shape. As the recess period ended and students filed back toward the academy building, Professor Zixal made another note in his database. Human recess activities appear to be voluntary stress tests of physical capabilities. Possible evolutionary adaptation to high-threat home environment. Further study essential. 2 weeks had passed since Noah Campbell's first day at the Galactic Academy of Sciences. His alien classmates no longer jumped when he entered the room, though they still watched him with fascination. During lectures, Noah was just another student, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions. But recess periods had become an unofficial field study for the entire xenobiology department. Today, Mocha the Trilexi student sat partially hidden behind a cluster of reeds near the lake. Her webbed hands held a recording device as she documented Noah's activities. She wasn't the only one. At least 5 other students had taken positions around the biodome, each recording from different angles. Day 14 of human recess observation, Mocha whispered into her device. Subject has established patterns we can now predict. On the far side of the lake, Noah was gathering straight branches that had fallen from trees. He tested each one for strength, setting aside those that met his standards and discarding the rest. The human collects natural materials daily, continued Mocha. Today appears to be a tool-making session. Professor Zixal had given the class permission to observe Noah as part of their independent studies. Several students were already working on research papers about human recreational behavior. What fascinated them most was how Noah never did the same activities 2 days in a row. He seemed to rotate through different skills, as if following some invisible training program. Noah sat on a flat rock and pulled a small pocket knife from his bag. The blade was within station regulations, but several aliens had still filed safety concerns when they first saw it. Now they watched as Noah carefully stripped the bark from one of the branches and began sharpening one end to a point. Subject is creating a primitive weapon, Mocha noted with both fear and excitement in her voice. This matches historical accounts of human hunting behaviors. When Noah had finished, he had created 5 spears of varying lengths. He stood up, tested the weight of each one, and walked to the edge of the lake. There, he stood perfectly still, spear raised, watching the water. The alien students held their breath, recording devices trained on the scene. Even the gaseous Moraxians, who normally drifted with the air currents, remained perfectly still. Noah's arm moved in a blur. The spear shot into the water with a splash. When he pulled it back, a fish-like organism wriggled on the end. Collective gasps echoed across the biodome. "The human has killed for sport," whispered a horrified first-year student. "No. For food," corrected Klavex, who had become something of an expert on Noah's behaviors. "Though the cafeteria provides adequate nutrition, this appears to be practice." Across the biodome, dark clouds suddenly formed near the environmental control ceiling. This was part of the biodome's programmed weather cycles, creating rain every few days to water the plants. Most students immediately headed for the exits or sheltered spots when this happened. Noah looked up at the gathering storm, then quickly gathered his spears and moved toward a cluster of trees. Instead of leaving the biodome, he began breaking off leafy branches and arranging them between 4 trees in a square pattern. "Subject is building a shelter," Mocha recorded, herself getting wet as she continued her observation. Remarkable speed and efficiency. Within minutes, Noah had created a simple lean-to. He sat beneath it, completely dry despite the heavy rain now falling. From his backpack, he removed a small container and placed the fish inside. The rain stopped after 15 minutes as scheduled. Noah emerged from his shelter and walked to a clearing. There, he gathered some dry twigs and small branches that had been protected by larger trees. He arranged them carefully, then pulled something from his pocket. "A fire starter," gasped Klavex, who was watching from behind a boulder. "Is he allowed to create fire in the biodome?" There were no specific rules against it, as no one had ever considered the possibility that a student would want to make fire during recess. Noah struck his flint and steel together, creating sparks that caught on the dry material. Within moments, he had a small, controlled fire burning. He cleaned the fish with his knife and began cooking it on a stick over the flames. Professor Zixal, who had been observing from the entrance, finally stepped into the biodome and approached. "Noah, Mr. Campbell, the professor said, his mandibles clicking rapidly. May I ask what you are doing? Noah looked up and smiled. Just having lunch, Professor. Would you like to try some? Fresh fish tastes better than the protein packs from the cafeteria. The professor's antennae twitched in confusion. You created this fire? For cooking? During recess? Sure, Noah replied casually. It's good to keep my survival skills sharp even during downtime. Never know when they might come in handy. Professor Zixal's compound eyes reflected the dancing flames. Survival skills, he repeated slowly. You consider this recreation? Noah nodded, not realizing that his simple explanation was about to change the Academy's understanding of human psychology forever. The next day after his fishing demonstration, Noah walked into the cafeteria to find most of his xenobiology class sitting together at a large table. This was unusual. Typically, species kept to themselves during mealtimes due to their different dietary needs. As Noah approached with his tray of standard protein rations, the group fell silent. May I join? You? He asked, sensing their eyes on him. Mocha, the blue-skinned Trilixie student, nodded and moved over. We were hoping you would come. We have questions. Noah sat down and looked at the gathered aliens. Even Clavex, the nervous Valorian who had initially been most afraid of him, was present. I saw you watching me yesterday, Noah said with a friendly smile. I hope I didn't break any rules with the fire. Not exactly, said Mocha. She placed a small device on the table and tapped it. A hologram appeared, showing footage of Noah's activities over the past 2 weeks. I've been documenting your recess periods for my thesis on Deathworlder behavior patterns. Noah watched the compilation with amusement. There he was running, climbing, building shelters, making tools, starting fires, and finding water sources. In the biodome. This is really good footage, he said. Nice camera work. You're not upset? Mocha's gills fluttered in surprise. Why would I be? It's just basic stuff, nothing special. Noah took a bite of his protein cube. The aliens exchanged glances. Basic? Repeated Clavex, crystal structure pulsing with confusion. You created a water filtration system using only sand, charcoal, and cloth. And you built a functional shelter in 14 minutes, added another student. You made fire without technology, said a gaseous Moraxian student, his containment field vibrating with excitement. Noah shrugged. These are just survival skills. Most humans learn them as kids. My scout troop covered this stuff when I was 12. The table fell silent as the aliens processed this information. Children? Mocha finally said. Human children learn to create fire and hunt? Well, yeah. Not all of us, but it's pretty common. We call it camping or wilderness training. It's fun. Noah looked at their shocked expressions and realized there was a cultural gap he hadn't appreciated. What do young aliens do for fun? We study, said Clavex. We prepare for academic achievement. We practice breathing in different atmospheric mixtures, bubbled the Moraxian. We memorize the chemical compositions of substances, added Mocha. Noah nodded slowly. That sounds educational. But don't you ever just play? The word didn't translate well. Professor Zixal, who had been listening from a nearby table, came over. Mr. Campbell, I believe we're witnessing a significant cultural exchange moment, the professor said. Would you be willing to explain more about these survival skills and why humans consider them recreational? Noah looked around at the curious faces. Sure. Actually, I could do better than explain. I could show you during the next recess period. Like a demonstration? Asked Mocha eagerly. More like a lesson, Noah replied. If anyone wants to learn, I'd be happy to teach some basics. The aliens murmured excitedly among themselves. I would like to learn about water filtration, said Clavex, surprising everyone with his boldness. I wish to understand fire, said the Moraxian, despite having no solid form to actually create flames. Professor Zixal's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of excitement. Mr. Campbell, would you consider turning tomorrow's recess into a formal instruction period? I believe this would be invaluable for cross-species understanding. Noah grinned. That sounds great, but we'll need more time than just recess. Some of these skills take practice. I can arrange for extended biodome access, the professor said. This will be classified as an official xenobiology field study. As word spread through the cafeteria, more alien students approached their table, curious about the humans' survival lessons. By the end of the lunch period, Noah had a list of 27 students from 12 different species who wanted to learn human recreational survival techniques. I don't get it, Noah said to Professor Zixal as they left the cafeteria. Why is everyone so interested in basic camping skills? The professor's compound eyes seemed to study Noah with new respect. Mr. Campbell, what you call basic camping skills are, to most galactic species, extraordinary abilities that would mean the difference between life and death in an emergency. You've been casually demonstrating advanced survival techniques that most of my students have only read about in historical texts or emergency manuals. Noah. News spread quickly through the Galactic Academy of Sciences. By the next morning, the entire faculty knew about the human's survival skills and his upcoming demonstration. What had started as a simple recess activity had become the talk of the station. Dean Yolifex, the six-armed administrator of the academy, called Professor Zixal to her office before classes began. I understand you've approved a special project involving our human student, she said, her translucent skin pulsing with mild concern. Is this advisable? Deathworlders can be unpredictable. Professor Zixal showed the dean the recordings of Noah's activities. With respect, Dean, I believe this is an unprecedented research opportunity. Mr. Campbell displays skills that most species lost thousands of years ago when technology advanced beyond the need for them. The dean watched the footage of Noah creating fire and building shelters. Remarkable. And he claims these are recreational activities for humans? Activities taught to their young even, Professor Zixal confirmed. I believe formal documentation of these skills would benefit the academy greatly. The dean considered this, then nodded. Very well. I'll approve the extended biodome access. But I want safety protocols in place, and I want all sessions recorded for the archives. When Noah arrived at the biodome that afternoon, he was surprised to find not just his classmates waiting, but senior faculty members, research assistants, and even a few visiting scholars. A small area had been cleared, with log seating arranged in a semicircle. This is more than I expected, Noah said to Professor Zixal, suddenly feeling nervous. Word traveled quickly, the professor explained. The xenobiology department formally requested permission to record your demonstrations for research purposes. Is that acceptable? Noah nodded, though he still found it strange that anyone would be interested in such basic skills. He spotted Mocha setting up multiple recording devices around the clearing. Today's lesson will focus on identifying safe water sources and basic filtration methods, Noah announced to the gathered aliens. On Earth, clean water is essential for survival, but not all water is safe to drink. The audience leaned forward, fascinated. Several faculty members took notes as Noah explained how to recognize signs of contamination in water sources. The biodome lake is already clean, Noah continued, but I'll demonstrate how you could filter water in an emergency situation. He gathered sand, charcoal from his previous fire, and a piece of cloth from his backpack. With practiced movements, he created a layered filtration system in a hollow piece of wood. The aliens watched in silence as muddy water he poured in the top came out clear at the bottom. This removes larger particles and some contaminants, Noah explained, but it doesn't kill all harmful microorganisms. For that, you'd need to boil the water or use purification tablets. Fascinating, murmured a senior researcher. Such simple materials, yet so effective. As Noah continued his demonstration, he noticed a group of engineers from the station's maintenance crew had joined the audience. They whispered among themselves, occasionally pointing at different parts of the biodome. After the lesson ended, Professor Zixal approached Noah with the engineers. Mr. Campbell, these are our environmental systems specialists, the professor said. They have a request. The lead engineer, a reptilian being with scaled skin, stepped forward. We were impressed by your demonstration, human. We would like to make some modifications to the biodome to provide more challenging terrain for your recreational activities. Noah raised his eyebrows. What kind of modifications? A flowing water feature, the engineer said. What you might call a river or stream. Also some more varied rock formations for climbing and perhaps a section with less hospitable plant life. That sounds great, Noah replied, genuinely excited. The biodome is nice, but it's a bit too perfect for real survival practice. The engineer nodded. We will begin work immediately. The modifications should be complete within 3 days. As the group dispersed, Klavex approached Noah hesitantly. The crystalline student had been watching the water filtration demonstration with particular interest. Mr. Campbell, Klavex said, crystal structure vibrating slightly. I have been researching human survival techniques in the Academy database. There is very little information. Would you consider allowing me to document your knowledge more formally? Sure, Noah said, but why the interest? Your species doesn't even need water the same way I do. Klavex's crystalline form seemed to shine brighter. That is precisely why it fascinates me. My species evolved on a world with minimal environmental threats. We never developed the adaptations or knowledge that humans take for granted. Learning how other species survive helps us understand the universe better. Noah smiled, finally understanding the alien's fascination. I'd be happy to help, but you should know I'm not an expert. I just know the basics that most humans learn. If that is what most humans know, Klavex replied, then your species is even more remarkable than we realized. Later that evening, Professor Zixal submitted a formal research proposal to the Galactic Science Council. The title read, Deathworld, Adaptations, How Recreational Activities on Class 12 Planets Serve as Continuous Survival Training. The proposal included a request for funding to bring more human students to the Academy for comparative studies. The academic interest in Earth survival skills had officially begun. 3 days later, Noah entered the biodome and stopped in amazement. The engineering team had transformed the space completely. A swift flowing stream now cut through the center with various depths and current strengths. New rock formations rose from the ground, offering challenging climbing surfaces. One section had been filled with dense vegetation that looked nothing like the carefully arranged plants from before. Do you approve of the changes? Asked the lead engineer, appearing beside Noah. This is incredible, Noah replied, genuinely impressed. It looks much more like Earth's wilderness now. Word of the improved biodome spread quickly. When Noah arrived for his next scheduled demonstration, he found not just his usual audience, but students from other departments as well. Even more surprising were the 5 alien students standing apart from the others, wearing what appeared to be their own versions of exercise clothing. Professor Zixal approached with the small group. Mr. Campbell, these students have expressed interest in not just observing, but participating in your survival training sessions. Noah looked at the volunteers with surprise. There was Mocha, the Trilxie student who had been recording him. Klavex, the once fearful Valorian, a tall, plant-like being with flexible vine-like limbs. A hovering insectoid with 4 pairs of delicate wings, and a small, furry creature that resembled an earth lemur. Are you sure? Noah asked them. Some of these activities might be physically demanding. Klavex's crystalline form pulsed with determination. We have studied your previous demonstrations and adapted the techniques to our physiologies. We want to understand Deathworlder survival from experience, not just observation, added Mocha, her gills fluttering with excitement. Noah grinned. Well, today I was planning to teach basic climbing and rope techniques. Let's see what we can do. The lesson began with Noah demonstrating how to test hand and foot holds before trusting them with body weight. The alien students watched carefully, then approached the rock wall with varying degrees of confidence. Mocha, with her webbed hands and feet, took to climbing naturally. The plant-like student simply extended vine tendrils to secure itself to the rock face. Klavex, despite his crystalline body, proved surprisingly agile, finding tiny crevices to grip with his faceted appendages. The insectoid student initially tried to fly up, but soon understood the purpose was to learn climbing itself. The furry student moved with impressive agility, leaping between holds with ease. "Excellent progress," Noah called out encouragingly. "Remember, always maintain 3 points of contact with the surface when possible." As the lesson continued, other aliens began approaching the rock wall eager to try. Professor Zixal, despite his 8 spindly limbs not being ideal for climbing, even made an attempt, managing to ascend several feet before carefully returning to the ground. After climbing, Noah taught them how to create simple rope from plant fibers. The plant-like student naturally excelled at this, producing perfect cord from its own molted tendrils. "On Earth, we use ropes for many survival purposes," Noah explained. "Securing shelters, climbing assistance, creating snares for food and even emergency medical uses." He demonstrated how to tie basic knots, then helped each student practice with their newly made ropes. The biodome filled with the sounds of concentration and occasional triumph as knots were successfully completed. "I never imagined I would find such activities engaging," admitted Klavex to Noah as they worked side by side. "On my homeworld, we spend most of our development cycle in silent crystallization. Physical skills are rarely cultivated." "Different environments create different needs," Noah replied. "Humans need these skills because our world can be dangerous." By the end of the session, Noah had taught the group how to create a basic pulley system to lift heavy objects. The alien students worked together to raise a large log, their different physiologies each contributing unique advantages to the task. Professor Zixal approached as the class was ending. "Mr. Campbell, the A." 2 months had passed since Noah Campbell began teaching survival skills at the academy. The once suspicious aliens now greeted him warmly in hallways. His multi-species survival techniques course had become the most popular elective in academy. History, with a waiting list 300 students long. The biodome had been modified weekly, each time becoming more complex and challenging. Today, Noah led his core group of alien students through a terrain navigation exercise when the overhead light suddenly flickered and died. "Is this part of the lesson?" asked Mocha, her bioluminescent skin providing a soft blue glow in the darkness. Noah frowned. "No, something's wrong." The emergency lighting activated, casting everything in dim red. A moment later, the station's AI announced over the speakers, "Attention all personnel, environmental control systems experiencing critical malfunction. Emergency protocols activated, please proceed to designated safety zones." Professor Zixal rushed into the biodome, mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. "Mr. Campbell, we have a situation. A power surge has damaged the station's main environmental controls. Backup systems are functioning at minimal capacity." "How bad is it?" Noah asked, already gathering his students. "Quite severe," the professor replied. "Station repair crews estimate 12 hours before full systems restoration. Meanwhile, conditions throughout the station will become increasingly unstable." Noah noticed the temperature in the biodome was already dropping. "What about evacuation procedures?" "The emergency shuttles are being prepared, but there's another problem." The professor's antennae drooped. "The malfunction has triggered automatic lockdown protocols for all biodomes. We're sealed in until systems are restored or emergency override codes are transmitted from Central Command." "How many people are trapped in here?" Noah asked, surveying the biodome. 42 students and 7 faculty members," said the professor. "And the biodome's independent environmental systems are affected as well. Temperature will continue to drop. Some areas may experience toxic gas leaks from damaged plant systems, and the artificial gravity might fluctuate." Noah's mind raced. These were precisely the kind of emergency scenarios that humans trained for. He looked at his alien students, who were watching him with a mixture of fear and hope. "Professor," Noah said firmly, "we've been practicing for this type of situation. We can handle it." He turned to his core group. "Klavex, your crystalline structure isn't affected by cold. I need you to scout the perimeter and identify any areas with gas leaks. Stay away from them and mark their locations." Klavex's form pulsed with determination as he moved away. "Mocha, your bioluminescence is crucial now. Gather all the light sources you can find and establish a central meeting area by the large boulder formation. The Trill XI student nodded and began organizing other students to help. Ziv, Noah said to the plant-like student, your species can filter air through your leaves. Set up near any gas leaks Clavex identifies and create clean air pockets. Noah continued assigning tasks based on each species' natural abilities. The hovering insectoid would monitor temperature variations from above. The furry lemur-like student would gather insulating materials for those susceptible to cold. Professor Zixal watched in amazement as the human took charge with calm efficiency. Mr. Campbell, this is beyond a class exercise. This is exactly what we've been training for, Noah replied. We just didn't know it. Within an hour, Noah and his students had established a central safe zone. Using techniques from their lessons, they built insulated shelters, created water collection systems from the now erratic biodome sprinklers, and established air filtration stations. When the gravity briefly failed, those who had practiced Noah's zero-gravity movement techniques helped secure others who floated helplessly. When temperatures dropped to near freezing, the group used body heat conservation methods Noah had taught them. 6 hours into the crisis, Dean Yolafex contacted them through the emergency communication system. Professor Zixal, repair crews. Report conditions in the biodome are becoming life-threatening for several species present. We're attempting to override the lockdown, but systems are responding unpredictably. Understood, Dean, the professor replied. However, I must report that the situation here is not what you might expect. Through the video link, the dean could see the organized camp behind the professor. Aliens of different species were working together, using primitive but effective techniques to maintain safe conditions. At the center of it all was Noah, calmly directing operations and checking on the well-being of each student. Is that the human student? The dean asked, translucent skin pulsing with surprise. Yes, Professor Zixal replied proudly. Mr. Campbell has implemented what he calls emergency survival protocols. His training exercises prepared our students remarkably well for this situation. Dean Yolafex studied the scene carefully. Those are the survival techniques he's been teaching? The ones we classified as recreational? Indeed, the professor said. It appears that what humans consider play is, in fact, preparation for precisely these scenarios. In the background, Noah was showing a group of younger students how to create heat-reflective barriers using emergency blankets and biodome materials. His face was serious but not frightened. This was what humans did. They prepared, they adapted, they survived. Dean, Professor Zixal said quietly, I believe we may need to reconsider our classification of Deathworlder behaviors. What we've witnessed today suggests they are not simply evolutionary curiosities, but essential adaptive strategies that other species might benefit from learning. The dean watched as Noah efficiently organized a rotating schedule to maintain their camp through the night. I believe you're right, Professor. When this crisis is resolved, I want a full report for the Galactic Education Council. This may change our entire approach to multi-species education. Meanwhile, Noah checked on Clavex, who was helping to reinforce a shelter. How are you holding up? He asked the crystalline being. I am functioning optimally, Clavex replied, then added with what Noah had learned to recognize as humor. Though I admit, this is not how I expected to apply today's lesson on emergency shelter construction. Noah smiled. The best training is the kind you don't know is training until you need it. 1 month after the biodome crisis, the Galactic Academy of Sciences held a special ceremony in its Grand Assembly Hall. Representatives from 27 worlds attended, along with various media outlets and officials from the Galactic Education Council. Noah Campbell, wearing his formal academy uniform, stood uncomfortably on the stage as Dean Yolafex addressed the gathered crowd. The events of last month revealed something profound about interspecies education, the dean said, her translucent skin glowing with formal ceremonial patterns. When environmental systems failed, trapping 52 individuals in rapidly deteriorating conditions, survival seemed uncertain for many species present. The large screen behind her showed footage from the biodome during the crisis. Noah organizing teams, Mocha using her bioluminescence to guide others, Clavex reinforcing structures, all working together using techniques they had learned in Noah's classes. What we witnessed was not merely adaptation, but preparation. Human. Student Noah Campbell had, unknowingly to us all, been training his fellow students for exactly such an emergency through what his species considers recreational activities. Noah shifted his weight from one foot to the other, still uncomfortable with the attention. Beside him stood his core group of students, now officially designated as assistant instructors in the expanded survival program. The Galactic Scientific Council has reviewed our findings, continued the Dean, and has approved a significant revision to our classification system for species development. She gestured, and a new chart appeared on the screen, showing the traditional 12 classes of planetary environments. A new notation appeared beside Class 12, Deathworld. Rather than viewing Deathworlder adaptations as merely aggressive or concerning traits, we now recognize them as sophisticated survival strategies, with applications for all species who venture beyond their native environments. Professor Zixal stepped forward, mandibles clicking excitedly. The new multi-species survival education program will become a standard requirement for all Academy students, with specialized tracks based on physiological capabilities. The professor turned to Noah. Mr. Campbell's methods have been documented and will form the foundation of this curriculum, but perhaps most exciting is today's announcement. The Dean nodded and continued. The Galactic Education Council has approved the immediate acceptance of 6 additional human students to the Academy. They will arrive next semester to expand our understanding of Deathworlder adaptation strategies and assist in developing species-specific training protocols. The assembly hall erupted in applause and various species-specific expressions of approval. Noah noticed Clavex's crystalline form vibrating in the particular frequency that indicated enthusiasm. After the ceremony, Noah escaped to a quiet corner of the reception hall. Mocha found him there, her blue skin patterned with celebratory markings. "You're hiding," she said, gills fluttering with amusement. "Humans don't like being the center of attention," Noah explained. "Well, some do, but I don't." "Yet another fascinating human trait," Mocha noted. "You will share